Hello. Welcome to Tarot and Attachment. My name is Erin Smith, and I am a professional tarot reader and an associate marriage and family therapist. And wanted to take this opportunity to consult the cards because we will be having a new moon in the sign of Sagittarius on Friday, December 19th. And this will be the last new moon of 2025. And there's a lot going on in the collective, as you all well know. So I wanted to ask Spirit if there was anything that would be helpful for us to know, to keep in mind as we're moving towards the end of the year, so that we can take skillful action out in the world in our own lives. And let's just see what archetypes are coming through at this time. So I'm going to go silent. I'm going to concentrate while I shuffle, and I will be with you momentarily. I'm just going to say a prayer over these cards. Mhm. So the cards are offering us a really profound insight about the nature of reality and how it is largely influenced by the stories that we tell ourselves, by the way we conceive of things through the mind's eye. And in order for us to create a world that feels nurturing and provides for the wealth and well-being of all people, it is important that we notice what narratives we are operating out of. And I think that this is really not just something that we must do as individuals, but something that we would do well to notice as a society at large. That the stories, the narratives, the mythology, these are things that influence our actions in daily life. And there's a lot of sword energy coming up here. So the Ace of Swords is like the highest octave of a vision. It is this, it feels like the truth. It feels like being struck with an understanding that is like a lightning bolt, this understanding, this vision for the world that is of the highest good. And we're being called to hold this in our mind's eye, to stay focused on this vision of the world around us that gives us the ability to both work our will, to recognize our own power and volition, and to be able to act accordingly. So the emperor is the highest law in the land. What he decrees is made so. And the emperor is not at the mercy of circumstance. He's able to take his vision of the world and implement it in a skillful way. And I would say, obviously the shadow side of emperor is one who is the tyrant. So, if we are going to utilize these images as a template for our highest good, and that's really what ACEs are pointing us towards, then I personally would like to align with the beneficial side of this archetype, which is about personal volition, not feeling like I am a victim of circumstance, being able to assess what is happening in my world around me and choose wisely. And in order to do that, it's important to not get lost in a narrative of despair. That if I am feeling that the world is this treacherous place and I have no power to do anything about it, then it will impact my ability to create in ways that are fruitful. And that's really what the Queen of Pentacles represents. She is a kind of earth mother. And her message is that all the seeds that get planted will blossom and bear fruit. She is a very fertile and flourishing kind of energy. This idea that we really do have the power and the impetus to create a life that is beneficial, it is abundant, it provides well for all living beings. And again, going back to this idea of what is the vision that we are holding in our mind's eye that is going to be our guiding principle. Because remember, not everything your head tells you is helpful or true. And for that matter, not everything, the mainstream media tells you is helpful or true. Not everything, there's a lot of propaganda that has a very particular kind of agenda that is at the heart of its creation, where I think, people in power like to put forth a message that is that capitalizes off of making people feel fearful and to relinquish their own personal power. And so this ability to practice discernment, to cultivate critical thinking, I think is really important. And partly how we do this is we have to disidentify from our own internal narratives as though they represent the absolute truth and as though they represent who I am. So I often associate, well, it is my experience that my long-term meditation practice has been extremely helpful at getting me to slow down and notice what narratives I'm running in my head from the position of the witness. When I identify as the witness and not as the content of my thinking, then I am able to notice several things. First of all, I'm able to notice how certain narratives will affect me emotionally and physically. So there's a correlation between these two sense spaces, even though they are separate sense spaces. This is activity happening in mental talk space. This is activity happening in emotional somatic space. But these two sense spaces overlap, they influence one another. So it's very helpful for me to notice, what is the emotional sensory experience that I'm having in relation to different narratives. And then I get to also practice discernment. Do I know that something is true, and is it helpful for me to believe it? And when I have disidentified from my thoughts to the degree that I can watch them from the point of the observer, then I can weigh some of this out. Instead of being so captured by the content that I'm just instantly propelled into a state of fear based on, like, the world is falling apart. Treacherous leaders are in charge. You know, whatever it is, whatever I'm experiencing in the world that feels significantly threatening, if I'm able to watch those thoughts from a place of, I mean, not stillness necessarily, but just from a place of calm resolve, then I am a lot more likely to choose my actions wisely because I'm just less reactive, is really what it comes down to. And this is also really helpful to stay in this higher octave of a vision for what I wish to create in the world and identify with this power of will in order to take right action. Um, because again, there's just a lot happening. It is easy to feel heartbroken in the face of great violence and tragedy and mental illness and the way that that impacts all the people in society across the world. It is heartbreaking. And we are in a turbulent time. But what the Three of Swords is asking us to do is to stay connected to our emotions, our empathy, and definitely feel grief. That this is not about suppressing any of that, but it's about being very mindful of the narratives that accompany grief. And as best we can to separate those strands of experience, to feel our feelings, so that those emotions can move through, they can be processed without getting stuck in a well-worn neurological groove. Um, this is an interesting card. What I usually associate with the Seven of Swords is this condition of people pleasing. And I think more specifically in relation to this reading, it's about really sort of not questioning the status quo, right? Um, so it's sort of this thing of like aligning your own thought process or your own belief systems with others unquestioningly because it's what feels safe. Instead of, again, examining your own point of view and practicing discernment. It's this idea that it is beneficial for us to examine our own thinking and not just take it for granted that everything your head tells you is helpful or true, or everything that qu question the source, right? I think is really what the message of the Seven of Swords is. Um, he's sort of being sneaky. He's trying to get away with something. He is picking up a narrative as a form of sort of disappearing into the status quo. And ultimately, again, I think it's important for us to take a step back, to pause when agitated. Um, to not allow the fearful narrative to govern us to the degree that we lose sight of what our ultimate vision for ourselves and our future might be. The Four of Swords is taking respite from the battle of life. It's being in reflective repose. And again, I very much associate this with meditation. And so, if we are going to practice discernment with our narratives, it is important to pause, to be mindful, to be watchful before we take an action, to get clear about why we think and feel a certain way, and realistically what we are able to do about it. How we are able to create a world that feels vibrant and thriving for everyone. Because, I mean, not surprisingly, there are big changes that are playing out, and they have been playing out for some time now. So, a good reminder with the tower, people tend to find this imagery sort of activating. There's a lot going on here. It feels very destructive. But it's important to recognize that philosophically, the tower is very much aligned with Kali. Kali is the goddess of creation and destruction. These are simultaneous forces. It is important to remember that in order to have space for a new higher paradigm to come in, it is necessary that we clear out the old forms, the old institutions, the old belief systems that are no longer working, that are no longer serving the greater good of the collective, and that this is a very natural process. We have to welcome in the death of systems that have run their course, so that we can reallocate that energy, right? Energy is neither created nor destroyed, it is only redistributed. And so that energy gets reallocated when we are of sound mind, when we have a clear vision about what it is that we wish to create, and that we can orient ourselves towards a world that takes care of all its creatures, all its living beings. You know, for me, I include ecosystems, uh, waterways, forests, all of it needs to be healthy and thriving for each one of us to live well. And this is the vision that I am holding in my mind's eye as we move through the end of the year. So, watch your thoughts, I think, is really the takeaway here. And maybe practice meditation, being introspective, being reflective about what we hold dear, even in the face of great change. So I hope this has been helpful. I am wishing you many blessings. as we move into this holiday. Take care. Much love.